History is filled with kings, emperors, and conquerors. But what about the women who ruled with iron fists? These were queens and empresses who commanded armies, destroyed rivals, and struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. From poisoners to warriors, their power was so great to change the course of nations. This is the untold story of the world's most dangerous female rulers in history. The Serpent Queen of Egypt. When we think about powerful women in history, one name always shines above the rest: Cleopatra VII. It's the last queen of ancient Egypt. She is remembered as one of the most dangerous and fascinating rulers the world has ever seen. But Cleopatra was not dangerous because she carried a sword or led armies into bloody battles. Instead, she was dangerous in a different way. She used her intelligence, charm, and political skills to protect her throne and to keep Egypt powerful in a world ruled by mighty men. Cleopatra became queen at just 18 years old in 51 BC, after the death of her father, King Ptolemy XII. At first, she ruled with her younger brother, but very quickly, palace politics turned against her. Her own advisors and brother pushed her away from the throne. Many rulers in her place would have given up or fled, but Cleopatra was different. She fought back not with weapons, but with strategy. She knew that to survive, she needed strong allies. And at that time, the most powerful ally anyone could have was Rome. Rome was the superpower of the ancient world. Its generals controlled huge lands, vast armies, and endless wealth. Cleopatra understood that if she could win the support of Rome, she could keep her throne. So, when Julius Caesar, the great Roman general, arrived in Egypt, Cleopatra took a huge risk. According to legend, she secretly entered Caesar's palace, rolled up in a carpet, presenting herself as a gift. This bold move shocked Caesar, but it also impressed him. Soon Cleopatra became his ally and his lover. With Caesar's help, Cleopatra defeated her enemies in Egypt and reclaimed her throne. She proved that she was not just a pretty face, but a cunning ruler who knew how to use opportunities to her advantage. Together, Cleopatra and Caesar even had a son named Caesarion. But her story did not end there. After Caesar's assassination in Rome, Cleopatra turned her eyes toward another powerful Roman leader, Mark Antony. Mark Antony was one of Caesar's most trusted generals and one of the most powerful men in Rome. Cleopatra saw in him both a partner and a protector. Their partnership was strong, both politically and personally. They became famous lovers, and together they dreamed of creating an empire that could rival Rome itself. Cleopatra provided Antony with wealth, ships, and soldiers, and in return, he gave her security and influence. The two of them stood against another Roman leader, Octavian, who would later become the first emperor of Rome. This struggle led to the famous Battle of Actium in 31 B.C. Cleopatra and Antony's forces were defeated by Octavian's navy. After the battle, their fate was sealed. Rather than live as prisoners or trophies of war, both Antony and Cleopatra chose to die on their own terms. Cleopatra, according to legend, allowed a venomous asp, a type of snake, to bite her, ending her life. She was only 39 years old. Cleopatra's death marked the end of Egypt as an independent kingdom. Octavian took control, and Egypt became a Roman province. Yet Cleopatra's legacy lived on. She has been remembered for centuries as a woman who dared to stand against the greatest empire of her time. She was dangerous because she could bend powerful men to her will. Because she dreamed of empires, and because she refused to play the role of a weak queen. Instead, she played the game of power better than almost anyone else. Even today, Cleopatra's story continues to inspire books, plays, and movies. She represents the kind of danger that comes not from violence but from intelligence, ambition, and charm. She was the Serpent Queen of Egypt, beautiful, cunning, and unforgettable. Empress Wu Zetian, the Dragon Empress of China and the long history of China, filled with emperors, dynasties, and wars.
There was one woman who rose higher than all others. Wu Zetian.
She is remembered as the only woman in Chinese history to rule as emperor in her own name. She was clever, ruthless, and determined. Some saw her as a wise leader who brought peace and progress, while others saw her as a cruel woman who stopped at nothing to gain power. Either way, Wu Zetian was one of the most dangerous and powerful female rulers the world has ever known. Wu Zetian was born in the year 624 AD during the Tang dynasty. She came from a wealthy family, but not from royalty. At just 14 years old, she entered the imperial court as a concubine, which meant she was part of the emperor's household, but with little power. Most girls in her position would have lived quiet lives forgotten by history, but Wu was different. She was ambitious and extremely intelligent. She learned to read, write, and study politics at a time when most women in China were not even taught to read. When Emperor Taizong, the ruler she first served, died, Wu was sent to a Buddhist convent, as was tradition for concubines with no children. But Wu did not accept this fate. She returned to the palace, this time becoming close to the next emperor, Gaozong. She became his favorite and soon rose to the rank of empress, replacing the previous queen. This was only the beginning of her rise. Once she was empress, Wu Zetian began building her power. She was very skilled at court politics, often playing rival groups against each other. To protect her position, she acted with extreme ruthlessness. Some stories say she even killed her own baby daughter to frame the former queen, making sure her rival would be removed forever. Whether these stories are true or just rumors made by her enemies, they show the fear Wu created in those around her. When Emperor Gaozong became sick, Wu Zetian began making decisions in his place. She sat behind a curtain in the royal court, listening to discussions and then giving orders in the emperor's name. After Gaozong's death, Wu continued to hold power, first as Empress Dowager, mother of the new emperor, and later by placing her own sons on the throne. But she did not stop there. In 690 AD, Wu Zetian declared herself Emperor of China, creating a new dynasty called the Zhou dynasty. This was the first and only time a woman ruled China as emperor. As Emperor Wu was both feared and respected. She expanded China's borders, strengthened the government, and supported Buddhism, which gained her many loyal followers. She improved farming systems and encouraged talented people, no matter their social class, to take important government jobs. In many ways, she was a capable and effective ruler, yet her methods were harsh. She created a secret police force to hunt down enemies and used brutal punishments to silence those who opposed her. Many nobles and officials were executed during her reign. Wu Zetian ruled as emperor for 15 years. Even after she was forced to give up the throne at age 80, her influence was remembered. She died in 705 AD, leaving behind a legacy that is still debated today. Some see her as a hero who proved women could rule as well as men. Others see her as a dangerous tyrant who ruled with fear. But no one can deny that she was one of the most extraordinary and powerful women in history. Her story shows us that danger does not always come from the sword. Sometimes it comes from ambition, intelligence, and the ability to outsmart every rival. Wu Zetian was called the Dragon Empress, and just like a dragon, she inspired both respect and terror. Catherine the Great, the Iron Empress of Russia. When we think about powerful queens in European history, one of the most famous names is Catherine the Great. She ruled Russia for more than 30 years and turned it into one of the strongest countries in the world. But behind her crown was a story filled with danger, betrayal, and ambition. Catherine the Great was dangerous not only because she ruled with an iron hand, but also because she never let anyone stand in the way of her power. Catherine was not even Russian by birth. She was born in 1729 in a small German principality. Her real name was Sophie Friederich August von Anhalt-Zerbst. As a teenager, she was brought to Russia to marry the future emperor, Peter III. Sophie changed her name to Catherine, converted to the Russian Orthodox faith, and prepared for a new life. But her marriage was far from happy. Peter was weak, childish, and unpopular with the Russian people. Catherine, on the other hand, was smart, charming, and full of ambition. She quickly learned the Russian language, studied politics, and began winning supporters at court. When Peter III finally became emperor in 1762, his rule was a disaster from the start. He made foolish decisions, upset the army, and angered the church. Catherine realized that if she wanted to survive, she had to act quickly. With the help of powerful allies, including army officers and nobles, she organized a coup d'etat, a sudden takeover of power. Within just 6 months of Peter's reign, Catherine forced him to give up the throne. Soon after, Peter died under mysterious circumstances, and many believed Catherine had a role in his death. Whether or not that is true, it shows just how dangerous she was to her enemies. Now crowned as Empress of Russia, Catherine ruled for 34 years. From 1762 until her death in 1796, during her reign, Russia grew larger and stronger than ever before. She expanded the empire's borders, taking new lands from Poland, the Ottoman Empire, and even reaching toward the Black Sea. She modernized Russia's government, formed the legal system, and supported education and the arts. Many called her a true enlightened monarch because she admired European ideas about science, art, and progress. She even exchanged letters with famous philosophers like Voltaire and Diderot. But Catherine's rule was not all light and wisdom. She faced several dangerous revolts, the biggest one being the Pugachev Rebellion in 1773. A man named Yemelin Pugachev claimed to be the rightful czar and led tens of thousands of peasants in a bloody uprising. Catherine crushed the rebellion with brutal force, showing that she would never allow her throne to be threatened. She also ruled harshly over serfs peasants tied to the land, which led to much suffering among the poor. Catherine's personal life was as dramatic as her politics. She was famous for having many lovers, and some of them even helped her rule. But no matter who came into her life, she'd never let anyone control her. She was always the one in charge. That independence made her both admired and feared. By the time Catherine died in 1796, she had made Russia a global power. She had turned a weak and unstable empire into a strong and respected nation. She was dangerous because she combined intelligence, ambition, and fearlessness. She had no problem removing anyone of her own husband if they stood in her way. Catherine the Great is remembered today as one of the most powerful women in history. To her supporters, she was a wise and brilliant Queen Mary I, Bloody Mary of England. In the long history of England, few queens are remembered as darkly as Mary I, who ruled from 1553 to 1558. She is better known by her terrifying nickname Bloody Mary. Her reign was short, lasting only 5 years, but it was filled with fear, flames, and blood. Mary is remembered as one of the most dangerous female rulers. Because of her fierce determination to bring back the Catholic faith in England, even if it meant burning hundreds of people alive. Mary was born in 1516, the daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Her childhood was full of pain and uncertainty. When Henry divorced Catherine to marry Anne Boleyn, Mary was declared illegitimate and removed from the line of succession. She spent many years treated as a servant rather than a princess. But through it all, Mary never lost her faith in the Catholic Church and her belief that she was the true heir to the throne. When her younger half-brother, King Edward VI, died in 1553, Mary saw her chance. Protestant nobles tried to place Lady Jane Grey on the throne, but Mary gathered support from the people and marched to London. The citizens welcomed her, and Mary was crowned queen. First, many celebrated her victory, but soon, England would learn that Mary's rule would be one of fire and fear. Mary's greatest goal was to undo the Protestant reforms that her father and brother had started. She wanted England to return fully to the Catholic faith. To achieve this, she married Philip II of Spain, the powerful Catholic king of Europe. This marriage made her unpopular, as many English people feared Spain would control their country. But Mary ignored the critics. Her focus was on religion. She began passing strict laws against Protestants. Those who refused to return to the Catholic faith were declared heretics, and Mary showed no mercy to heretics. Between 1555 and 1558, around 280 men and women were burned at the stake. Some were priests, others were simple farmers or craftsmen, but all were punished for refusing to give up their Protestant beliefs. The most famous victims were Bishops Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Ridley, and Thomas Cranmer. They were burned in public, and their deaths shocked the nation. Latimer is remembered for his final words to Ridley as the flames rose. "Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle, by God's grace in England, as I trust shall never be put out." These words turned them into Protestant martyrs, and ensured that Mary's reign would always be remembered for its cruelty. The constant executions earned her the name Bloody Mary. Instead of bringing unity, her brutal methods only deepened the divide between Catholics and Protestants. The people grew angry and afraid. Even her marriage to Philip brought her no happiness. As he spent most of his time in Spain and cared little for her, Mary also longed for a child, but her pregnancies turned out to be false, adding to her despair. By 1558, Mary's health was failing. She died at the age of 42, leaving the throne to her half-sister. Elizabeth I, unlike Mary, Elizabeth would rule for decades and become one of England's most beloved monarchs. But Mary's short reign left scars that could not be erased. Today, Queen Mary I is remembered not for her victories or reforms, but for the fires that burned across England during her rule. She was dangerous because she let her religious passion blind her to mercy. In her attempt to save England's soul, she stained her name with blood. And so history remembers her forever as Bloody Mary. Queen Zinga, the warrior queen of Angola. When most people think of powerful rulers, they imagine kings sitting on golden thrones or queens wearing sparkling crowns. But in Africa, during the 1600s, there was a woman who earned her place in history not because of jewels or riches, but because of her courage and strength in battle. Her name was Queen Nzinga Mambandi, and she ruled the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba in what is today Angola. She is remembered as one of the most dangerous and fearless female rulers because she stood up to the Portuguese. One of the strongest colonial powers of her time, Nzinga was born in 1583 into a royal family. From a young age, she showed signs of intelligence and leadership. Unlike most women of her time, she was trained in politics, diplomacy, and even the art of war. Her brother became king of Ndongo, but when he struggled against the Portuguese, Nzinga stepped forward to help. She was sent as his representative to negotiate peace with the Portuguese governor in 1622. It was during this meeting that Nzinga showed her sharp mind and unshakable pride. When she entered the room, she noticed that the Portuguese governor had provided no chair for her. This was meant to insult her, making her stand while he sat. But Nzinga was not the type to be humiliated. She ordered one of her servants to get down on all fours, and she sat proudly on the servant's back. This act shocked the Portuguese, but it also proved that Nzinga would never allow herself to be treated as lesser. Nzinga eventually became queen after her brother's death. From that moment, she ruled with both wisdom and ruthlessness. She built strong alliances with neighboring African tribes and even made deals with the Dutch, who were enemies of the Portuguese. She needed both friends and powerful weapons. What made Nzinga truly dangerous to her enemies was her skill in guerrilla warfare. Instead of fighting the Portuguese in open battles, she used surprise attacks, ambushes, and quick raids. Her warriors, both men and women, struck fear into the hearts of the colonizers. Nzinga often fought on the battlefield herself, dressed as a man and leading her soldiers with unmatched bravery. But Nzinga was not just a warrior. She was also a clever politician. She strengthened her kingdom's economy by controlling trade routes and making Matamba a safe place for runaway slaves and rebels. She gave hope to people who had lost everything to slavery, and in return they became loyal to her. This made her kingdom strong and difficult for the Portuguese to defeat. Despite facing betrayal, invasions, and endless wars, Nzinga never gave up. Even in her 60s, she was still riding into battle, proving that her spirit could not be broken. By the time she died in 1663 at the age of 80, she had ruled for nearly 40 years. Her leadership kept her people free from complete Portuguese control, and her name became a symbol of resistance. Today, Queen Nzinga is remembered in Angola as a national hero. Statues of her stand tall, reminding everyone of the fearless woman who fought for freedom. She was dangerous to her enemies because she combined courage, intelligence, and determination. To her people, she was not just a queen, but a protector. To the Portuguese, she was a nightmare they could never defeat. Nzinga's story proves that true power is not just about crowns and castles. It is about the strength to fight for your people, no matter the odds. Was the warrior queen of Angola, and her legend still inspires the world. Rani Lakshmibai, the fearless warrior queen of India in the mid-1800s. When the British Empire was spreading its power across India, one woman stood up like a lioness to protect her land and her people. Her name was Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi, and she is remembered as one of the bravest women in Indian history. To her people, she was a symbol of courage and freedom. To the British, she was a dangerous rebel who refused to bow down. Rani Lakshmibai was born in 1828 in the holy city of Varanasi. Her childhood name was Mani Karnika, but her family lovingly called her Manu. Unlike most girls of her time, Manu was trained in horse riding, sword fighting, and archery. She was quick, strong, and fearless. These skills would later make her one of the most legendary warrior queens in history. At the age of 14, Manu was married to the Maharaja of Jhansi, a small kingdom in northern India. After marriage, she became known as Lakshmi Bai. For a while, her life seemed peaceful. But tragedy struck when her husband died in 1853 without leaving a natural heir. Lakshmi Bai and her husband had adopted a son, but the British refused to recognize him as the rightful heir. Instead, they tried to take control of Jhansi under the doctrine of lapse, a policy that allowed the British to seize kingdoms without a male heir. The British expected Lakshmi Bai to step aside quietly, but she had other plans. "I will not give up my Jhansi." From that moment, she became a symbol of resistance. She gathered soldiers, trained women to fight, and prepared her people for war. In 1857, the Great Indian Rebellion broke out against the British. Rani Lakshmi Bai played a key role in this uprising. She dressed in armor, rode her horse into battle, and fought with 2 swords in her hands. Her courage inspired not only men, but also women to join the fight. She became a warrior queen who led from the front, never hiding behind palace walls. One of the most famous stories about her bravery comes from the siege of Jhansi in 1858. The British attacked the city with a huge army, but Lakshmi Bai defended it fiercely for weeks. When the walls of Jhansi were finally breached, she did not surrender. Instead, she tied her young son to her back, mounted her horse, and broke through enemy lines to escape. This act of bravery became legendary. Even after losing Jhansi, Lakshmi Bai did not give up. She joined other rebel leaders and continued the fight against the British. In June 1858, during the Battle of Gwalior, she fought bravely until her last breath. She was only 29 years old when she died, but she died as a warrior, sword in hand. To the British, Rani Lakshmi Bai was one of the most dangerous enemies they faced in India. But to Indians, she became a hero, a mother, and a symbol of freedom. Her name is still remembered with honor, and her story continues to inspire generations. Rani Lakshmi Bai showed the world that courage is not about size or strength, it is about the fire in one's heart. She was the fearless warrior queen who proved that even in the darkest times, one woman's bravery can light the spark of freedom. Queen Isabella I. The queen who shaped a new world when we talk about the great queens of history. Isabella I of Castile stands out as one of the most influential and dangerous rulers of her time. She ruled Spain in the late 1400s, alongside her husband Ferdinand of Aragon. Together, they are remembered as the Catholic monarchs who united Spain, launched the Spanish Empire, and set the stage for the discovery of the New World. But Isabella was more than just a partner. It was a powerful queen in her own right. Her determination, strict faith, and bold decisions changed not only Spain, but also the course of world history. Isabella was born in 1451 in the Kingdom of Castile, one of the largest regions in Spain. At that time, Spain was not one united country. Instead, it was divided into different kingdoms, often fighting each other. From a young age, Isabella was known for her intelligence, strong character, and deep religious faith. When her half-brother, King Henry IV, died in 1474, Isabella claimed the throne of Castile. This was not easy. Many nobles opposed her, and a civil war broke out. But Isabella, with her sharp mind and loyal supporters, managed to secure her crown. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon was a turning point in history. By uniting Castile and Aragon, Isabella and Ferdinand laid the foundation for modern Spain. Together, they created a powerful kingdom that could compete with other great nations of Europe. Isabella, however, was not just a queen sitting quietly beside her husband. She actively took part in decisions, led armies into battle, and made bold choices that shaped the destiny of Spain. One of Isabella's most famous achievements was the completion of the Reconquista, the centuries-long struggle to drive the Muslim rulers out of Spain. In 1492, Isabella and Ferdinand's armies captured Granada, the last Muslim stronghold. This victory was celebrated across Europe and gave the Catholic monarchs great prestige. But Isabella's methods were harsh. She was deeply religious and wanted to create a united Catholic kingdom. In 1478, she and Ferdinand established the Spanish Inquisition, a court that punished people accused of heresy. Thousands of Jews and Muslims were forced to convert to Christianity or face exile. Many others suffered torture and execution. This made Isabella both respected and feared. In the same year, 1492, Isabella made another decision that would change the world forever. An Italian sailor named Christopher Columbus came to her with a daring plan to sail west across the Atlantic to find a new route to Asia. Many rejected his idea, but Isabella saw an opportunity. She agreed to fund his voyage, giving him ships and supplies. Columbus's journey led to the discovery of the Americas, opening the door to Spanish colonization and the birth of a global empire. Isabella's reign was full of both greatness and cruelty. On one hand, she strengthened Spain, supported education, and helped transform her kingdom into a world power. On the other hand, her policies led to suffering for Jews, Muslims, and Native Americans who faced conquest and forced conversions. When Isabella died in 1504, she left behind a legacy that is still debated today. To her supporters, she was a brilliant and determined queen who gave Spain unity and strength. To her critics, she was a dangerous ruler whose religious zeal caused suffering and destruction. But no one can deny her impact. Isabella was dangerous because she combined intelligence, faith, and ambition to shape the destiny of nations. She was the queen who helped create Spain and open the doors to a new world-changing history forever. Empress Dowager Cixi, the Tiger Empress of China in the late 1800s. When China was facing foreign invasions, rebellions, and great internal troubles, one woman rose to control the empire from behind the throne. Her name was Empress Dowager Cixi, and she is remembered as one of the most powerful and controversial rulers in Chinese history. To some, she was a wise leader who kept China stable during chaotic times. To others, she was a dangerous woman who clung to power at all costs. But no matter which side you take, Cixi was a ruler unlike any other. Cixi was born in 1835 to a poor family, far away from the royal court. At the age of 16, she was chosen as a concubine for Emperor Xuanfeng of the Qing dynasty. Life in the Forbidden City was difficult, with hundreds of concubines competing for attention. But Cixi was clever, patient, and ambitious. She learned how to navigate the politics of the court and gain the emperor's trust. When she gave birth to his only surviving son, her position became secure. In 1861, the emperor died suddenly, leaving his young son as the new Emperor Tongzhi. Because he was too young to rule, Cixi became Empress Dowager, meaning she would act as regent until he grew up. At first, many officials underestimated her, but Cixi quickly showed her strength. She worked with allies inside the palace to remove her rivals and took control of the government. For the next 47 years, she ruled China sometimes directly, sometimes from the shadows. Cixi was dangerous to her enemies because she never allowed anyone to take power from her. She used spies, secret police, and clever plots to defeat her opponents. Many officials who challenged her disappeared or were executed. But at the same time, she was also a capable leader. Under her rule, China's government stayed intact during the Taiping Rebellion, one of the deadliest civil wars in history. She also dealt with foreign powers like Britain, France, and Russia, who were constantly trying to carve up China for themselves. However, Cixi often resisted change. In the late 1800s, some reformers in China wanted to modernize the country with new schools, railroads, and armies like those in Europe. Cixi allowed some changes, but when she felt her power was threatened, she shut them down. During the 100 Days Reform in 1898, she placed the young Emperor Guangxu, her adopted son, under house arrest and executed many of his advisors. This showed how far she was willing to go to protect her position. Cixi also supported the Boxer Rebellion in 1900, when a group of Chinese fighters rose up against foreigners and Christians. At first, the rebellion seemed strong, but foreign armies quickly crushed it. It was forced to pay heavy penalties. and many blamed Cixi for the disaster. Yet even after this failure, she managed to stay in power until her death in 1908, when Empress Dowager Cixi died. She left behind a country weakened by foreign control and slow to modernize. Some historians blame her for China's decline in the 19th century. Others argue she was a skilled survivor who kept the empire together in the face of impossible challenges. What is certain is that Cixi was one of the most dangerous and fascinating women in history. She came from nothing, rose to the highest position in the empire, and ruled for nearly half a century. She was feared by her enemies, respected by her allies, and remembered by history as the Tiger Empress of China woman who proved that even in the Forbidden City, power did not always belong to men. Queen Olga of Kiev, the avenger of Rus in the early medieval world, long before Russia became the giant empire we know today. There was a powerful state called Kiev in Rus. It was a land of warriors, traders, and princes, and in the 10th century, it was ruled for a time by one of the most dangerous women in history, Queen Olga of Kiev. She is remembered not only as a clever ruler, but also as a ruthless avenger. Her story is filled with blood, fire, and shocking revenge. Olga was born around 890 AD. She married Prince Igor of Kiev, the ruler of Kiev and Rus. For many years, she lived as his loyal wife. But in 945, tragedy struck. Prince Igor was killed by a neighboring tribe called the Drevlians, who wanted to break free from Kiev's control. His death left Olga a widow with a young son, Sviatoslav, who was too young to rule. This meant Olga became regent, ruling in her son's place. Many thought she would be weak and easy to control. They were very wrong. The Drevlians made a huge mistake after killing Igor. They sent a group of men to Olga with a bold proposal that she should marry their prince, and together they could rule. They thought she would accept. Instead, Olga plotted one of the most brutal revenge stories in history. First, she tricked the Drevlians' messengers. She ordered her servants to carry the men in their boats through the city of Kiev, as if they were honored guests. But instead of welcoming them, she had them buried alive. Then she sent word to the Drevlians, pretending to agree to the marriage. She asked them to send their most important leaders to Kiev. When these men arrived, Olga invited them to a great bathhouse. Once they were inside, her soldiers locked the doors and burned the bathhouse down, killing them all. Still not satisfied, Olga prepared a third act of revenge. She traveled to the Drevlian capital under the excuse of holding a funeral feast for her late husband. The Drevlians came to the feast in great numbers. When they were drunk, Olga ordered her soldiers to slaughter them.
Oh.
More than 5,000 people were killed that night. Finally, Olga led an army against the Drevlians, who still resisted. She demanded tribute from them 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each household. The Drevlians thought this was a light punishment and gladly gave the birds. But Olga had a cruel plan. She ordered her soldiers to tie burning cloths to the legs of the birds and release them. The birds flew back to their homes, setting the entire city on fire. The Drevlian capital was destroyed and Olga's revenge was complete. After this, Olga ruled Kiev and Rus with strength and stability until her son was old enough to take power. Later in life, she became one of the first rulers of Rus to convert to Christianity. The church even declared her a saint, remembering her for bringing Christianity to her land. But history has not forgotten the darker side of her rule, the blood-soaked revenge that made her one of the most feared women of her time. Olga of Kiev was dangerous because she combined intelligence with cruelty. She showed that even in a violent age dominated by men, a woman could rise, rule, and strike fear into her enemies. She was not just a queen. She was a ruler, whose story still shocks the world today. Queen Ranavalona I, the Mad Queen of Madagascar in the 19th century. On the large island of Madagascar, there ruled a queen so feared and so ruthless that history remembers her as the Mad Queen. Her real name was Ranavalona I, and she ruled from 1828 to 1861. During her 33 years on the throne, she protected her kingdom from European colonization. But she also became known for her cruelty, harsh punishments, and strange policies. To her people, she was both a protector and a nightmare. To foreign powers, she was one of the most dangerous women of her age. Ranavalona was not born into direct royal power. She became queen after her husband, King Radama I, died without a direct heir. Many expected her to serve only as a caretaker ruler, easily controlled by advisors. But Ranavalona quickly proved that she was no puppet. She seized power, executed rivals, and made it clear that she would rule Madagascar her own way. Her reign was marked by two major goals: keeping foreign influence out and maintaining her absolute control. At a time when European nations like Britain and France were expanding their empires, Madagascar was in danger of being taken over. Ranavalona resisted fiercely. She cut off many ties with European traders and missionaries, expelled foreigners, and tried to keep Madagascar independent. In this sense, she protected her people from becoming a colony. But while she kept outsiders away, her rule inside the island was brutal. Ranavalona believed in using fear to maintain control. She revived old customs, including cruel trials by ordeal. For example, when someone was accused of a crime, they were forced to eat a poisonous nut. If they survived, they were considered innocent. If they died, it was seen as a sign of guilt. Thousands lost their lives through this system. She also punished anyone who opposed her with torture, forced labor, or death. Historians estimate that hundreds of thousands of Malagasy people died under her reign, whether from forced marches, dangerous building projects, or executions. Because of this, she became known as the Mad Queen, feared even by her own subjects. Despite her cruelty, Ranavalona was a skilled ruler in some ways. She managed to keep Madagascar independent during a period when many African lands were falling under European control. She also strengthened the economy by encouraging local industries and ensuring that her kingdom did not become too dependent on foreign goods. Her policies of isolation kept Madagascar free, but at a terrible cost to her people. Foreigners who visited her court were shocked by her behavior. Some described her as paranoid and unpredictable, as others saw her as strong and determined. A queen who refused to let her island be swallowed by European empires. Both views may be true. She was a complex ruler whose ambition was matched only by her ruthlessness. When Ranavalona finally died in 1861, at the age of 83, her people were both relieved and uncertain about the future. She left behind a country that was still independent but deeply scarred by decades of fear and bloodshed. Today, Queen Ranavalona I is remembered as one of history's most dangerous female rulers. She was dangerous because she combined a strong will to protect her kingdom with a merciless cruelty toward her own people. To some, she was a nationalist hero who defended Madagascar's independence. To others, she was a tyrant whose rule brought misery and death. Either way, her story shows the double edge of power, how one woman's determination could both save and destroy a nation. From Cleopatra of Egypt to Ranavalona of Madagascar, these women proved that power has no gender. They were rulers who inspired loyalty, struck fear into their enemies, and shaped history in ways that are still felt today. Their stories remind us that danger doesn't always come with a sword. It can come with intelligence, ambition, and an iron will. If you enjoyed learning about the world's most dangerous female rulers, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next history adventure. And tell us in the comments, which of these queens or empresses do you think was the most dangerous of them all? Your support helps us bring more powerful stories from the past straight to you.